This week on Hip Hop Now podcast, we talk about the one, the only, Tupac Shakur.
But let's get right to the business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone.
Classic albums are. Classic albums
are. Come to Hip Hop Podcast.
What up, y'all? I am Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast Extra, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip hop music and culture that happen throughout the week. And if you don't know what the extra means, well, the extra just means that we are going to focus in on one topic at hand. And of course, we have to celebrate the life, the energy that is Tupac Shakur. First and foremost, you can follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. If Facebook is your bag, facebook.com/hiphop right now. Hit that like button, share it with people who you know like this type of content. And also, never forget, this podcast is available right here on Death Star Radio, DSR.FM. You can also download the app, which is free 99. Available on iOS and Android. Yes. And if you don't want to do that, it's cool. You can also visit soundcloud.com/hiphopnowpodcast. For this episode and so many more that I've done, I've hit 100 episodes. I appreciate everyone who's tuned in, who's supported, retweeted, shared it, commented, whatever you had, but we need more. All right, we need more. But let's get into the topic of the day, the topic of the hour, the topic of the year, if you ask me. Tupac Shakur, his birthday is June 16th. He was born in 1971. Unfortunately, he passed away at the young age of 25 in 1996. On June 16th, 2017, he would have been 46 years of age. Now, everybody know Tupac. Everybody. Even everybody. Everybody knows Tupac, right? Whether you grew up listening to his music, whether you grew up listening to the music of his rivals at the time, which we'll get into, whether, maybe you're a person that just wasn't into hip-hop whatsoever, but you heard of Tupac. And maybe you don't know that much about Tupac, the person, the man, the artist. Since this is a hip-hop podcast, we're going to focus in more on the hip-hop part of that and Tupac's importance to the hip-hop game, along with his contributions. Now, everybody knows that the biopic depicting Tupac's life is coming out. Who knows? Maybe it's already out and you've seen it. Maybe I've seen it. Let's go to the future. But it's entitled All Eyes on Me, which bears the same name of one of my favorite albums, the double album All Eyes on Me from Tupac. And it's interesting to see what is going to happen with the movie in regards to fan support, critics, even fan reaction, honestly, to the movie, because NWA was kind of like a perfect storm in regards to when that came out. And, people had basically kind of forgot, except for like hip hop heads like that, about NWA. So it was kind of dope. But with Tupac kind of stays in the consciousness of pop life. You know what I'm saying? Period. Not Pac life, but you can say that. So this is a little bit closer to home. This is a little bit more recent than what happened with NWA, and the fact that it ended so tragically, and the fact that Tupac is not here to be a part of this, you know what I'm saying? Or there's not more stories to be told about his life. It's interesting. The movie's releasing on his birthday, so it's only right that right here on Hip Hop Now podcast that we focus in on it. And let me give you a little backstory on my exposure to Pac. When was the first time you heard Pac? Well, me, the first time I heard Tupac actually was in video form. I was watching Pump It Up that used to come on back in the 90s. hip hop video show. Back in the days, you had to stay up like at midnight on a Sunday. I mean Saturday. Well, I guess you could say Sunday. But on Saturday night, you stay up late, and instead of watching Saturday Night Live, you watch Pump It Up with D. And it was just pure hip hop, all hip hop videos, interviews, or whatever. And I remember Digital Underground had a new record called "Do What You Like" that was attached to some whack movie. I can't remember, but I liked Digital Underground. I liked all their music until I saw like this other dude that was rapping that I never saw with Digital Underground. Or maybe I never paid attention, and his name was Tupac. Well, actually, I didn't even know his name at the time, put it that way. But what struck me, what made him stand out in that song and in that video wasn't only the fact that the brother was in the African garb and he was being carried around, because the video had a, Afrocentric vibe to it. But I thought he was dope when he was rhyming. Like, I was just into it. And I remember that being like my best part of that video. And every time the video would come on, I kind of anticipated that part because that was the part that struck a chord with me, and that was Tupac. Then, and again, I'm younger around the time, so I don't really have my own money to buy stuff and things of that nature. But I remember the next time I saw Tupac again on Pump It Up, up late at night, just trying to see what new hip hop videos was out. And it was the guy, Tupac, again. And I recognized him this time, like, oh, is this dude, Tupac? And it was called Brenda's Got a Baby, and it was in black and white. And I just remember, like, after watching that video, which for me at the time, I'm a young dude. I didn't think about having no kids, and I definitely don't know anything about any abortions, not to that extent. And Tupac is schooling me, and I'm paying attention because this dude had this presence and this storytelling that felt so close to home, felt like he was talking. Because if you don't know, my name is Vegas. You can call me Steve. It's cool. But I grew up in the ghetto, New York City, Brooklyn, New York, 90s, 80s, all of that, right? So even though I may not have been going through, obviously, what that character was going through, I could relate because there were people around me. There was young ladies around me who were young and having children, and I saw it in the ghetto. So to have Tupac have this kind of record, and I had never heard a record in hip-hop like that before. Like, you got to understand, at the time, hip-hop was really about having the jams and the parties and stuff like that, and you had some conscious records that kind of spoke to black people as a whole and race issues and, saying no to drugs and things of that nature. But a song about abortion, I just didn't know, you know what I'm saying? And to have Tupac be the one to introduce me to that, later in life, I would appreciate those moments, those early moments with Tupac as we went on. Now you go scroll down the timeline or whatever, and again, I don't have paper, and there are albums that I want more than 2 Apocalypse Now, which is Pac's debut album. And I think I remember reading a review, and the review said that it wasn't that great except for a couple of songs like Trapped and Brenda's Got a Baby, whatever. So I was a little disappointed, even though I'd never heard it myself. So I never paid attention to it. And at the time, as I'm getting older and I'm hitting my teenage years, and Tupac, and I know this is a family podcast, but this is the name of the album, I put out Strictly for My Niggas. And, I wasn't one of the first persons to rush to the store to be like, I'm getting the second Pac album, because I kind of still felt the same way. I felt leery. I liked Tupac a lot from the songs I heard, but that was never enough. I heard a verse on Digital Underground, and there was a song I liked. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't enough for me to be like, yo, I'm going to go buy Tupac every trip. And I remember, again, how do I see another record from Tupac that I like? In video form. And this time it wasn't Pump It Up. It was probably MTV or something on BET. Maybe it was Rap City or something like that. And I saw the video for I Get Around. And look, there are a lot of Tupac records that I like, right? But when it comes to I Get Around, you talk about a record that never gets old every time you hear it. That record just never got old to me, ever. And I loved it from the first time I saw it. I loved the video. I know, ladies, it's not the best record, but in regards to, the respect level, but, it's a reality. And I love that record, and I was feeling like, man, every time I watch a Tupac video, I love the songs, but I don't buy his albums. What's going on? And then I remember he also had Keep Your Head Up on there, and I love that record, and I still felt some kind of way, and I remember, and I'm gonna give you a little backstory. You know what I'm saying? I rapped or whatever, and I was ghostwriting for somebody, right? On the low. Keep that on the low, though. Don't tell nobody. I was ghostwriting for somebody, right? And so we would have our little hip-hop conversations on the sidebar. And I remember, it was a female MC, by the way, and I remember she was like, yo, you don't listen to Tupac? And I was like, yeah, I like Tupac. I just don't own any albums because I don't think I've heard enough to want to go and buy an album. I'm young. I ain't got $10 doesn't come around that often for me. And I remember Shorty was like, look, I'm going to let you hold this album. You know what I'm saying? You already said you like Keep Your Head Up and I Get Around. The rest of the album is dope. And I listened to it. And there were a couple other records I liked, but I still couldn't really get into it. And I think it had more to do with production, to be completely honest. To be completely honest, I wasn't feeling some of the production. The production fit the time, but it didn't fit the records I had already heard. And I was kind of looking for that vibe. Not that content, but that vibe. So I passed on that album because I was like, yo, it's just not enough there for me to want, for me to force myself to like the album. Then I remember, again, Tupac is doing what he does. And the situation with him, getting ready to go into jail, getting shot at Quad Studios. And, I remember that whole situation, and I was a little conflicted because here's a dude that I loved him when he played when he was in Juice. I loved when he was in Above the Rim. I was like, man, this dude's an excellent actor, and he makes some dope records. I'm a true blue hip-hop fan, and I still don't own any of his albums, but I was like, well, why do I have to if I don't like everything? And I remember, right before he went to jail, man, he put out, probably arguably his best album or close to it, you know what I'm saying? And I remember, again, not really listening to the radio, hearing Dear Mama, you know what I'm saying? And Tears, So Many Tears or whatever. And I was looking at the album like, yo, this album's called Me Against the World. This dude got shot. He talking about this person blamed him. You know what I'm saying? And he had the rape charge, which he said he didn't rape nobody. This is probably the album to get. And I think at the time that it came out, I was transitioning from, high school to going to college. So there was a lot of other things on my mind where I wasn't buying as much music. I was literally buying the stuff that I was, that was literally on my radar. So I didn't have a lot of money to spread around, but I was like, man, this is probably the Tupac album I like. And again, maybe I was being stubborn because I was a very huge Biggie Smalls fan. I grew up in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of New York City, Brooklyn, New York, Gates Avenue, between Lewis and Stuyvesant, building 730. Went from 4C to the first floor, 1C, I believe. It was 1C. I can't remember. But the thing is Big was so Brooklyn that the fact that Pac was blaming him and Puffy, I had a problem with that, even though I liked Pac music so much. So maybe when it came to Me Against the World, I was kind of like a little bit stubborn and wasn't feeling that side of things. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, I still love the music. So I kind of, I just let it go. I listened to those records, and that was that. Fast forward to me being in college, freshman year. Tupac is free. Tupac is on death row. And he puts out, I'll never forget, man. I'll never forget. I know I've said this a number of times, but, take you down memory lane. Fulton Street in Brooklyn, New York. This is where we shopped. And they had the record shop. Beach Street. I used to go there all the time, like religiously, whether I had money or not, and see what the new hip hop was. And I was in there doing that usual thing. And lo and behold, the DJ, shout out to DJ Goldfinger, who was in there, who used to put me on to a lot of stuff as a youngin'. He played Hit 'Em Up. And I was like, yo, what record is this? Because at first, I knew it was Tupac because I recognized his voice. But the fact that it was just this relentless diss record, I went straight to the DJ booth like, yo, what is this? He was like, yo, Pac, he go crazy. And he was loving it. Mind you, this is Brooklyn. And I was kind of loving it on the low too because I was loving the fact that he was so bold to just come out and make this kind of record. Now, I knew lyrically Big was better as a lyricist, but I kind of thought like Tupac is deep. So he might be saying something deep. And honestly, he didn't really say anything that deep on that record. He just attacked. But that's what I loved it for. And I remember being at school at Morgan State University in Baltimore. And I remember when All Eyes on Me came out. And prior to that, songs would leak on mixtapes. And I remember like every song that leaked, I liked. And I was like, all right, it's time for me to stop fronting on Tupac. Yeah, he's talking bad about my man, Brooklyn all day, but I got to get this All Eyes on Me album. I haven't heard a whack record yet. You know what I'm saying? And sure enough, I bought it, and I will say this, it is I don't know, maybe it's because it's the one album that I invested in when it came to Pac, but it is my favorite Tupac album of all time. Sorry, I mean, it's my opinion, but I'm just saying, it's my favorite Tupac album of all time. What do you think? Leave your comments in the comment section. What's your favorite Tupac album of all time? But I remember, man, playing that joint and the production was right. Like Tupac was going to death row was the best thing and the worst thing that could have happened for Tupac for the simple fact that my gripes with production, and the reasons why I didn't buy some of those earlier albums, it was all dead. Tupac had the perfect production between Dre and Daz and everybody else that contributed. I remember looking at it and saying, he got Redman and Method Man on here. That's not going to work. And that record is dope too. And, I kind of felt good because I was like, man, I've always liked Tupac. I always admired Tupac. And, but I never really supported his albums because I felt like I didn't like enough. And now here I like one. And I felt from there on like, man, I'm going to buy every Tupac album from now on because this brother just knows how to show you different looks. He knows how to give you a party record. There's a record for the ladies. There's a record for the streets. There's a record for, for the conscious. Number of those. And they all kind of come from a real place with Tupac that you can relate to. And that's why some people love him so much because of those reasons. And I remember, listening to All Eyes on Me in the dorm room, while I'm on campus. Like, that Tupac album was rocking everywhere. Everybody loved it. I mean, like, loved it from like, you better not say anything bad about it type love. You know what I'm saying? Ready to fight, which is stupid, but you get it, right? And I remember, man, I'll never forget when I found out that Tupac had got shot again. And I just remember, like, I was in a club with some friends, in B-More. And I remember the DJ, like, we were on the dance floor. I believe we just got there or whatever, so we was kind of just scoping the scene. And I remember the DJ went on a mic, right, and was like, yo, y'all, Tupac just got shot again. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, well, actually, you know what? Let me rewind because I'm getting ahead of myself. When I heard Tupac got shot, It was in a whole nother situation. I believe it was at a club. It shows you how much clubbing I was doing. Uh, that particular scene that I just laid out for you, that was when I first heard that Tupac had died from the gunshot wounds. Uh, and probably that sticks out a little bit more to me just off the strength of the fact that, you know, you didn't think he would die. You know, he had been through so much. He had been shot 5 times before. You didn't think he was going to die. And I remember being in the club. I remember the DJ said something mad insensitive that I'm not going to repeat. He was almost, let's put it this way, he was almost happy to hear that. So, yes, kids, the East Coast, West Coast thing was whack for a number of reasons, but for a lot of buffoons, it was real, and they kind of wore it. They were all about it. But, I remember me and my friends, kind of in the bathroom, just like, we wasn't using the bathroom, so don't get it twisted. But, just kind of talking and reflecting like, damn, like none of us was happy to hear that Tupac had died. We all loved the music. No one wanted to hear that. And we were all from New York. No one wanted to hear that. And it was kind of upsetting. And I remember watching, like BET and MTV and, just trying to confirm and find out what happened. And, it was bad. It was real, like female friends that I had who was real huge Tupac fans were crying and in some cases feeling a little mad at New York, like we just all got together and shot him or something like that because of the stupid East Coast, West Coast beef. Thankfully nothing like that really played out, at least around me. But I'll never forget, man, when the video for I Ain't Mad at You dropped, and Tupac was basically a friend who was slain, who was a ghost, reflecting on his friends and saying, like, live your life. And he was in heaven, and Marvin Gaye was there. And I was like, man, did Tupac know that he was going to die? Because how is this your last video that you appear in, and you're in heaven in the video? And I believe he gets shot in the video. I just couldn't believe it. And from that point on, the legend of Tupac just went through the roof, because you already had this brother who was deep, from the Black Panther background of his family to what he, the consciousness he put in his music and the topics and how he spoke to the black community from an MC standpoint. And I just remember, like, when that video came out, like, he just became a martyr in some respects. You know what I'm saying? A martyr to the hip-hop game. And, we know there was a lot of times, let's not color everything, a nice color that we all enjoy. We know there was a lot of contradictions in his music and, a lot of mixed messages. But that's hip-hop in general. I learned that a long time ago. Dudes are going to contradict themselves. And a lot of times it has to do with growth. And you're talking about a dude who was killed when he was 25 years old. He didn't get a chance to have any children and things of that nature, things that kind of help certain young men grow and leave some of the foolishness behind. And who knows, he might have been on his way to that at some point in time. But it was a sad time when he passed away. And again, as a huge Biggie fan, I was kind of shook, because I was trying to figure out, is this East Coast, West Coast thing real? You know what I'm saying? And, through time we found out that a lot of other things have to do with Tupac's murder. But I also remember when I knew Machiavelli the Don, Illuminati, Tupac's next album was coming out. I knew day one I was going to get it. Not because he passed away, but because of how I felt after, getting the All Eyes on Me album. And I was ecstatic. Even though it was still some East Coast disses on there, that is arguably also Tupac's greatest album. It's not my favorite Tupac album, that's All Eyes on Me, but that might be his greatest album because of the timing. And unfortunately, him passing away and leaving these kinds of records behind, it just, again, the legend just grew even more and more. And it was like, damn, he was peaking. He died at the peak of his career. which is crazy because, Biggie Smalls also died at the peak of his career, or what we thought would be the peak because, we didn't see anything else that they could do after that besides, records they recorded previously. But where does Tupac stand in hip-hop as far as an artist goes? I don't really look at Tupac as a lyricist because he's not really about the wordplay and the trickery and the syllables and the nouns and the metaphor. Well, you should have syllables and nouns in your rhymes, or else I don't know what you're writing. And and the metaphors and stuff like that. Tupac is a message type rapper. He's a writer. He's not a freestyle artist who want to give you some ill lines and schemes. He's a writer, and he writes and tells stories, whether those stories be positive or negative. And what he tries to do, what his mission is when you listen to his music, if you've never heard Tupac records or never paid attention to Tupac records, believe one thing, there's conviction in every word he says. It doesn't matter if he's talking about sleeping with Biggie Smalls' wife, he meant that when he said it. You know what I'm saying? Or Brenda's got a baby and what she should have done, he meant that. And that's the one thing about Tupac that people love, is the fact that they know, regardless if his emotions were all over the place, they were always coming from a real place. You were always getting him 100% unfiltered, whether he was going to sit down and school you on, white America, you knew you were going to get true lyrics from him. And when I say white America, I'm not talking about everyone. We're talking about the racists, the bigots, corporate America, those that lean on poor white people just as much as they lean on blacks and other minorities. So don't get it twisted. But the fact that Tupac always made sure that his message was driven home, even a record like Dear Mama, where, he reveals some things about his mother that, some people wouldn't be willing to do, because of how it would look. But when he does that, it gives you a sense of respect for his mother, you know what I'm saying, and what she went through, trying to raise him and deal with her own demons in her own life. So, man, like, Tupac is a legend in the game. He should be celebrated. I mean, I get it. Some people may not like his rhyme style, may really only prefer lyricists when they listen to hip-hop. But please understand me. If you listen to this podcast, you're going to listen to Tupac a little differently after hearing some of these things I mentioned, because you have to listen to any artist with a little sense at least, or a little bit of background information, some context that you can go into it and saying, this is who this artist was or is, and now let me receive their message. Now, granted, we have some artists who can't really deliver on that, but Tupac definitely delivered. And if you've never listened to a Tupac album, let's just say that, I would say go back. Don't listen to a lot of the records besides Machiavelli after he died. Machiavelli, there's some good ones that came out after he passed, but Machiavelli is the only one after he passed you should listen to right now to see what I'm talking about, because all of those albums were dating back to his debut, to Apocalypse. They were what Tupac wanted you to hear. They were the messages he wanted, the beats he wanted, the features he wanted, the album covers. They were what he wanted. And, it's unfortunate that he passed away, but he left a lot of music, a lot of messages that are still on point to this day. And he needs to be saluted for that. Tupac, rest in peace, from me here at Hip Hop Now Podcast. What do you think about some of the things I mentioned? What's your Tupac story? When's the first time you heard him? Are you a Tupac fan? Leave your comments in the comment section. Follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. You know what I'm saying? And don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this podcast, which resides at soundcloud.com/Hip Hop Now Podcast. I am not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.
Drop it on the random.